Hello, this is Father Ignatius, and we are blessed to be here in Ars, France today. Ars is the city where St. John Vianney's parish was, and we also are blessed to be in his house at the moment. So if you look over here, this room contains the coffin that he was buried in. It also contains his bed, the bed frame. And if you notice, the bed frame is burnt because, as the story goes, St. John Vianney's bed was burnt by the devil at one point, and it was set on fire. St. John Vianney is very unique. He is patron saint of Catholic priests, and he's very holy, prayerful, and simple man, and we're going to get to see a little bit more of him as we walk together. This was his original room, very simple room. When he first became the pastor here in Ars, he lived in this room, and as we continue in this the second floor of his house, we have a room where we have a number of artifacts. Here are some original vestments. This is a cope for adoration. These are chasubles for Mass. Here's a stole and a surplice for hearing confessions. And here's a few pictures and different artifacts that are related to him. And so I'm just going to let Remy show you a little bit more of some of these pictures and artifacts. And these are all from the late 1800s, early 1900s. Now, let me say that again. These are all from the early 1800s. So, as we're going to learn today, St. John Vianney was born in 1786. He died in 1859. And over here is another little room that he had as his second bedroom. And you notice in this room there's quite a library that he had that helped him to write his sermons. And on his wall there's a variety of saints, including St. Ignatius up there, I believe, and St. Vincent de Paul. St. Vincent de Paul, of course, is also French. And then right there, I believe, is also St. Philomena. So this is a room from the early 1800s. St. John Vianney lived here for about 40 years, and this is one of his favorite pictures. It's the Annunciation, Mary and the angel Gabriel. And so this is an original painting. Then we come downstairs. This is the kitchen here and dining room. It's a little bit in disrepair at the moment, but this is where they had their meals. And this is a little courtyard area that's all connected to the rectory. Up here, right up above here as we walk, is the Basilica of St. Philomena. And this was actually built after St. John Vianney died. Excuse me. And he designed it, but he was not able to build it until after he died. which maybe was providential because then they could put pictures of him up in the basilica as well. Here's my favorite little statue here, St. John Vianney. He wasn't that tall, so he's standing up on like 6 inches here. We're basically the same size once he's up on the pedestal. So it's been really a blessing to be here at Ars. I want to just share with you a little bit more about the life of St. John Vianney. Again, he was born on May 8th, 1786. He died on August 4th, 1859. His real name was Jean Baptiste Marie Vianney, and he was born to peasant farmers in a town called Dardilly in France. And he was born basically during the French Revolution. So the French Revolution was happening in the 1780s all the way up until 1799. And this is a very dangerous time to be a Catholic, to be a religious, or to be a priest. And so St. John Vianney grew up having Mass in his home in secret. And his first communion was in secret, and it happened in his home. And so it's interesting that he grew up that way. And eventually he would have to go into the military. He was drafted into the military, and because of the French Revolution and some of the things that were happening, he didn't really get to start his formal education until later in his life, until he was 18, 19, 20. And then he's conscripted into the military for a couple of years. He thought, that it was a mistake because he was a candidate for the priesthood. And so he actually got a very serious fever and left the military and was able to hide out for a couple of years at a farm and get better. In 1810, the war that he was a part of ended, and he was able to return home. And in 1812, when he was 26 years old, he entered seminary again. And this time, he was older than some of his teachers. At the time, 26 was considered very old to be in seminary. And after a year, he had to leave because he couldn't handle the classes in Latin. All of his teachers were speaking Latin, and he hadn't really learned Latin because of the French Revolution, and growing up in that environment didn't allow him to learn Latin. So he left. But his parish priest, Abbe Bailey, actually saw something in him, and so he said, "Well, why don't I do some exams with him and some testing with him in French? Will you let me do that?" And the seminary agreed. He talked to him in French about the Bible and about theology. Turned out John Vianney knew a lot. He knew more than enough. And so they decided to make him a priest, even though he didn't formally go through seminary. He became a priest when he was 29 years old, August 12th, 1815, and he went on to serve with Abbe Bailey in his parish for 3 years. The first 7 months of his priesthood, he could not hear confessions. He was kind of on this probation time, and that will turn out to be ironic a little bit later here in this story. But eventually he was made pastor in Ars, which was a small town of 230 people here in France. And it was so small that John Vianney lost his way. He wasn't able to find it. But he found somebody that knew the way. And as somebody was showing him the way to his new parish in his new town, St. John Vianney said to him, "If you show me the way to Ars, I will show you the way to heaven." And that's, how he lived his life. He ended up being very famous for confessions. People came from all over the place to go to confession here in ours. And here we have the bells in ours. The bells are always ringing, it seems. Oh, good. That wasn't the
long way.
The long bell. That was the easy one. And John Vianney had the gift of reading hearts. And so if you didn't confess all your sins, then he would just tell you what your sins were. So this kind of came in handy sometimes, especially when people weren't confessing all their sins. And it wasn't unusual for him to hear 11 or 12 hours of confession a day in the winter and up to 16 hours a day in the summer, which sounds really strange. The most I've ever done, I think, in one day is maybe 4 hours. That's absolutely exhausting. So to be doing 12 to 16 hours a day, he really received a special grace to do that. And, you know, as time would go on, he became very famous for that. And pilgrims started to come to ours from all over France. And again, ironically, in the beginning of his priesthood, he wasn't able to hear confessions. St. John Vianney is also known for fasting. He's known for miracles. He's known for exorcisms. A lot of times he would just eat one boiled potato a day. That was his meal. That's the way he fasted. And there's a miracle where he multiplied grains of wheat. They had run out of wheat in the town, and he was able to do a miracle that way. And there was another story of a young boy who had a tumor on his face. John Vianney touched his face with his hand, and the tumor was healed. He was also attacked by evil spirits at times. At times he was attacked at night, and they would drag him around the room and throw his bed about. And one time the bed caught on fire while he was hearing confessions, and we saw that bed. And he also performed a few exorcisms, and there's stories about that as well. In 1843, when John Vianney was 57 years old, he became very sick, and he thought he was going to die. But he was cured, and he attributed his cure to St. Philomena. St. Philomena was discovered in the catacombs in 1802. John Vianney would have been 16 years old. We have all the kids coming through here today. And 2 by 2. And looks like they are speaking French. Well, John Vianney was 16 years old when they found the relics of St. Philomena in Rome. And at some point he developed a devotion to her. Again, he said that his cure came through her. He also just attributed all of his miracles to her. So he had a special relationship with her. That's why we have a statue of Philomena in our church, St. John Vianney in Sedona, Arizona. And we also have a relic of St. John Vianney and a relic of St. Philomena in our altars. John Vianney is known as the Curé of Ars, and that simply means the pastor of Ars. He was canonized as a saint in 1925 by Pope Pius XI, and he was made the patron saint of parish priests in 1929. His feast day is August 4th. And, you know, when we look at St. John Vianney, there's lots to admire. We have a lot of his writings, a lot of his sayings. I encourage you to find them and read them. They're very inspiring and interesting. He's also known for a prayer that I'm going to share with you now in conclusion. So this is St. John Vianney. He says, "I love you, O my God, and my only desire is to love you until the last breath of my life. I love you, O my infinitely lovable God, And I would rather die loving you than live without loving you.